They call it the Vance Anomaly. 1 millimeter. One wrong digit. A moment that didn't just end a mission, it erased my life. For 20 years, I vanished into this workshop, a ghost surrounded by dust and broken equations, waiting for the world to forget I ever existed. Until the steel door slid open. She was a 14-year-old girl with a high-tech crutch and fire in her eyes, holding blueprints I should have never seen again. She didn't want fame or forgiveness. She wanted legs, not to walk but to launch. 0G prosthetics. A design so bold it made my hands shake. Gravity is her enemy. Space is her dream. And she came to the most hated engineer on Earth to build the wings to get there. I swore I'd never touch a guidance system again, but the moment I looked at her math, I knew exactly why she chose me. This is the story of my final mission. I was polishing a brass sextant, trying to scrape tarnish off the past, when someone knocked on the steel door. It was a sharp, intrusive sound in my sanctuary. A millimeter of error in the vector, a whisper of a mistake born from fatigue, magnified over 1,000,000 miles into a scream. I remember the stomach-lurching silence after the engines cut off, a silence that stretched, thin and brittle, just before the alarms began their tinny, useless shriek. A cascade of failures so elegant, so mathematically perfect in its devastation, that the mission was already lost. My error. My promise to the world, broken by a single, flawed calculation. My legacy. That's the hum that truly haunts this place. The ghost in every machine. The clink of the sextant against the workbench was drowned out by a sharp, insistent rap on the workshop's heavy steel door. No one ever comes out here. My seclusion is a well-respected local legend, the tale of the astronaut who fell to Earth and never got up. For a moment, I considered silence, letting whoever it was fade back into the world I'd abandoned. But another knock came, louder this time, resonating through the concrete floor with an impatience that refused to be ignored. I slid the heavy door open a crack, the metal groaning in protest. A girl stood on the gravel path, no older than 14, with eyes the color of a protoplanetary disk and a jaw set with the kind of stubborn determination that bends steel. She leaned on a single high-tech carbon fiber crutch, her other leg encased in a complex lattice of metal and polymers that looked like something I would have designed myself, had I ever found the will. She held a rolled-up set of blueprints like a weapon. "You're Arthur Vance," she said. Direct. No hesitation. I rasped, turning my back. "Now I'm closed. Go away." She didn't move. "I need your help." She thrust the blueprints into the gap. "My name is Juno. I'm going to space. And you're going to help me build this." I almost laughed, a dry cracking sound. The sheer, impossible audacity of it. The unmitigated hope. I tried to slide the door shut, but she was faster, wedging the reinforced tip of her crutch into the frame. "Please," she said, her voice losing its sharp edge of command, replaced by a tremor of pure, unshielded vulnerability that pierced my armor more effectively than any demand. "They said you were the best. Not just an astronaut. An engineer. They said you could make anything fly. They were wrong. The one thing that mattered most I had failed to keep in the air. But my hands, acting on some long-dormant instinct, took the blueprints. I unrolled them on the workbench, the crisp paper a stark, hopeful white against the scarred and stained wood. The designs were brilliant. Ambitious. A fully articulated, gyroscopically stabilized prosthetic limb designed not for the clumsy gravity of Earth, but for the weightless ballet of orbit. It had integrated microthrusters for fine maneuvering, a haptic neural feedback loop that was still largely theoretical, and a compact power cell I hadn't seen outside of a NASA cleanroom. It was a beautiful, elegant solution to a problem I'd never even considered. Her condition, a degenerative bone disease, meant her legs could never withstand the crushing G-forces of a launch. But in 0G with this, she could fly. "I don't do this anymore," I said, my voice flat, a gravestone. I was pushing the schematics back toward her when my eyes snagged on a notation in the margin. A complex equation for gimbal precession, scribbled in pencil. It was nearly perfect, a testament to a sharp mind. But it was flawed. A tiny error in the derivative for angular momentum. The same kind of subtle, catastrophic error I'd made. Without thinking, my fingers found a stylus. "Your math is off," I muttered, the engineer in me overriding the hermit. "You're not accounting for harmonic resonance from the primary motor at peak RPM. The gyros will tear themselves apart in under an hour." She leaned over the table, her breath catching as her eyes, wide and luminous, followed the tip of my stylus. "Of course," she whispered, a sound of pure revelation. "The resonant frequency. It creates a positive feedback loop." A brilliant smile bloomed on her face, a supernova in the dusty gloom of my workshop. And for the first time in 2 decades, the hum in the room felt less like a eulogy and more like a prelude. That was how it began. Juno became a fixture in my tomb, a stubborn, brilliant weed growing through a crack in the sarcophagus. Our days found a new rhythm, a cadence set by the whir of the 3D printer and the sharp scent of flux. Her questions were relentless, sharp and bright as new stars. She didn't just want answers, she wanted the physics, the elegant, undeniable truths that stitched the universe together. The ghosts in the room grew quiet, crowded out by the sheer, vibrant force of her curiosity. White boards I hadn't touched in years filled with chaotic chalk dust equations. The hum of the workshop was changing. It was acquiring new frequencies, new harmonies. It was acquiring a purpose. We were fabricating the primary gimbal assembly, a delicate piece of engineering that had to be both impossibly strong and lighter than a whisper. I was milling a key support strut, the CNC machine carving away slivers of aluminum alloy that fell like silver dust. I was lost in it, the familiar dance of creation, the scent of cutting fluid, the precision of the numbers. So lost, in fact, that my hand slipped as I keyed in the coordinates for the final pass. A twitch. A ghost of a tremor. The cut was a millimeter too deep. Insignificant to most. To me it was a canyon. My breath hitched in my throat. The sharp smell of ozone from a nearby transformer was suddenly thicker, the air tasting of static and imminent failure. I wasn't in my workshop. I was back in the command module of the Odyssey, a single, incorrect digit glowing a malevolent red on the NAV computer. The Vance Anomaly. A millimeter of error, magnified into an abyss of black, empty space where the moon should have been. My knuckles were white where I gripped the edge of the machine. The old panic, a cold, familiar tide began to rise, choking me. Failure. A legacy of one flawed calculation, a recursive error doomed to be repeated forever. My hand shot toward the emergency stop, my mind screaming to scrap the piece, to scrap the whole damned project before I could fail her too. "What's wrong?" Juno's voice cut through the memory static. She had wheeled her stool over, peering at the flawed strut with an engineer's eye, not a judge's. Her gaze was a diagnostic tool, scanning not just the flawed metal but the fractured man before her. "It's ruined," I choked out, the words tasting like ash and regret. "The tolerance is gone. It's useless. It's compromised." She looked at the piece, then at my face, her expression not one of disappointment, but of intense, analytical focus. "So it's a problem," she said simply, as if I'd pointed out a miscalculation in her homework. She picked up a digital caliper, her movements economical and precise, and measured the depth of the flawed cut. "The error is uniform," she stated. "We can compensate." She looked up at me, her gaze steady and clear, burning away the fog of the past. "It doesn't have to be perfect, Arthur. It just has to fly." Her words struck me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't a catastrophic, defining failure. It was just a problem. A puzzle to be solved. An anomaly to be compensated for. My hands, which had been trembling, steadied. I took a deep, shuddering breath, letting the scent of solder and hot metal ground me in the here and now. We wouldn't discard the piece. We would adapt. I grabbed a tablet and started sketching a modification, a small, bracing plate made from a composite blend. It would not only compensate for the flawed depth but, by redistributing the load-bearing stress across a wider surface area, would actually strengthen the entire assembly. The new design was more elegant, more robust than the original. It was an answer born directly from a mistake. That day, something inside me shifted on its axis. The ghost of the Vance Anomaly didn't vanish, but it receded. It became a scar, not a phantom limb. The work became my absolution. Months bled into one another, marked by the quiet triumphs of solved problems. The finished prosthetic was a work of art, a fusion of gleaming carbon fiber and polished aluminum, its inner workings a beautiful, complex secret. The day of the test arrived on a wave of cold autumn air. We were at the university's neutral buoyancy laboratory, a cavernous building that smelled of chlorine and echoed like a cathedral, housing a colossal tank of water that was a stand-in for the void. Juno was being fitted into a dry suit, her face pale with a mixture of raw excitement and palpable nerves. I stood at the control console, a bank of monitors displaying the prosthetic's telemetry. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, chaotic rhythm against the steady, calm hum of the facility's filtration pumps. She was lowered into the water by a crane. For a moment, she just floated, a small, solitary figure in the vast, silent blue. "Okay, Juno," I said into the comms, my voice tight, betraying none of the terror I felt. "Activate the primary systems." Gently. On the screen, lines of code scrolled and power graphs spiked from green to amber. The prosthetic whirred to life, its internal gyros spinning up to speed with a sound I could feel in my teeth. Then it happened. The leg wobbled, a sudden violent shimmy that sent a jolt of ice through my veins. The telemetry went wild, jagged red lines screaming across my monitors. Cascade resonance. Euro stability failure. My own ghost, the Vance Anomaly, was reaching out from the past to drag her down with me. My hand flew to the emergency abort switch, hovering over it. The same tremor. The same harmonic resonance. My fix hadn't been enough. I had failed her. "Wait." Her voice crackled through the comm, astonishingly calm. "I see the pattern. The neural lag is amplifying the tremor. I have to lead it." I watched, breath held captive, as she stopped fighting the machine and started predicting it. She made a series of counterintuitive adjustments, a preemptive shift of her shoulders, a microcontraction of her core milliseconds before the wobble hit. She wasn't just wearing the device, she was the control system, closing the loop through the neural interface manually. She was dampening the resonance, forcing the chaotic vibration into a stable frequency. The violent wobbling lessened, then smoothed out, the machine surrendering to her command. The telemetry on my screen stabilized, the jagged peaks and valleys settling into a steady, beautiful sine wave. And then she moved. She pushed off from the gantry, not falling, not sinking, but soaring through the water with impossible, breathtaking grace. She twisted and turned, a dancer in an azure cosmos, unbound. She was flying. Through the thick observation window, I saw her face. Her eyes were closed, and on her lips was a smile of pure, unadulterated joy. Tears I didn't know I still possessed welled in my eyes, blurring the monitors into constellations of green light. A promise I had made to myself, to her, was finally kept. Back in the workshop, the silence feels different. It's not empty anymore. It's peaceful. A silence of completion. Juno's crutch is gone, left leaning against the workbench where she worked, a silent testament to a journey completed. The hum of the machines is no longer a choir of ghosts. It's the sound of cooling fans spinning down after a successful run, of power converters resting before the next challenge. It is the quiet hum of potential. On my main monitor, glowing in the quiet dark, is a new schematic, a fresh page. It's labeled Juno MK2. For the first time in decades, I'm not haunted by the thought of a final mission that failed. I am consumed by the hope of a new one that has just begun. My redemption wasn't found by looking back at the stars I had lost. It was found here, on the ground, by helping someone else learn how to touch them.